Hello everybody and welcome to part 2 of the building analysis. This builds on what we talked about before the tour. I just wanted to go more into depth about building examples and what to look for when you're inspecting an actual building. So I have some great examples here from around the United States as well as around Madison. Here's an example of Denver Union Station if you're curious. But let's get started on the actual analysis. So this is an example of a prefab home. It actually goes back to the 1900s and 1920s, where you actually ordered it from a Sears catalog. Over time, this evolved into the prefab homes that we know today. But it would actually arrive on the train back then, and you would move it to a site and assemble it uh, piece by piece. Talk about IKEA going on here. Here it's a house. What's really funny about these houses is now they're worth like millions of dollars in some cases, depending on the location. So here's an example of what it looked like from a catalog that you would actually buy. You just purchase it, and then it would be shipped off to wherever you're living. Another example that you could see here from the catalog back in the 1920s and all the way into the 40s, for example. So they were quite popular, and especially in the West where they built it. Here's my brother's house. Now, the house itself, when it was prefabbed, is really wood as well, but he had an addition on the back. And this is where I want to show you what it looks like when it's a stick frame, just in case you're curious. So this is on the inside. You could see where it's just 2x4s that have been put in place. Modern construction actually has it where it's prefab. The walls can actually be prefabbed off site, assembled, and then brought to the site. In this case, my brother, they assembled everything on the site. But this is also called balloon frame. It's very popular, very cheap, and very quick to put up, as long as the price of wood doesn't go up. So here's another example of the interior here. This is looking into the bedroom where you can see the walls, see the ceiling, see the windows being put in as well. This is before any insulation, any drywall, and of course any electrical. Now let's get to the point of another, on the complete other side of the spectrum is you know this building, the Nick. Well, I'd love to give you a little tour of what was there before the Nick. The Nick itself today is a steel framed building with a glass curtain wall on that north side. The rest of it is essentially brick, concrete brick. But before the time, yep, here we have an example of what was a Southeast Rec facility that stood at the Nick site beforehand. And one of the cool things here is I got to witness the demolition of the building. Did love the surf. It's where he decided to continue with academia, and I'm here in class today. But this building was built in 1985 and was in pretty sad condition. It was built cheaply, and that was part of the problem. So looking a little bit closer, this is the entrance to the building. This is instead of the little turnstiles that we go through where you just swipe your badge, here you actually had to hand it to somebody who would actually put it through the little magnetic reader on the little kiosk that they sat there. And then this was the main hall. You could actually see most of the utilities, the water, the heating, all going through this electrical, all going through the actual ceiling of the surface. It was not a pretty building. Here's a pool area if you're kind of interested. And then the track, which I have a story. The building was built so cheaply that if there's more than 20 people on the track would actually start vibrating. In fact, this is one of the reasons they had to replace the building was the facilities manager said, we looked at every way of, rebuild, adjusting, renovating is the word I'm looking for, the old surf, and we just give up. So that's why they decided to just tear it down, start from scratch, and rebuild the Nick. Here's a grand staircase in the old surf. It was beautiful if you can't tell. Yeah, not really. They didn't have cardio spread around floors. There was just the cardio room in the old surf. It was, like I said, it was pretty sad. Basketball courts, that's where you could see that the track on the top there, and the typical basketball courts there. And oh yeah, I got a shirt the last day that I was there before they shut down. In fact, I was there when they shut the 48 seconds till the building was going to be closed. And then you can actually watch the demolition. Here you can see the steel frame coming in with the claws from the, not tractors, but the cranes adjusting, where they literally just crunch through the metal as it's disassembled. On the left here, you can see is a pool by the one vehicle, and then where the gymnasiums were is on the right as it go through it. You could actually see the old locker rooms on the bottom there. And then here was the entrance of where we used to, swipe our IDs, which is, there you saw bad times at that point. But that's where you can see the whole steel frame, the roof system, which was on top. And you can still see the remnants of the track. In fact, where you see the yellow there on the upper level of it. In fact, that was where I took the picture just before. And a little bit closer here, you could see the track on top, the basketball courts, and the locker rooms down below. And then slowly eating away, that is the end of, on the upper left there is where the cardio room was before it was being taken down. And then remnants of where it was a steel frame and actually a steel wall at this part of the building. It's kind of odd. But that's where now we're taking it down. And then the last remnants of the surf there is the stairwell. And from the ashes shall be reborn the Nick as we go up. Here you can see the poured concrete columns, which are the stairwells for safety reasons, but then you have the steel construction for the rest of the building going up, and then the little bit of steel reinforced concrete on the outside before we put on the glass curtain on the north face there. And this is where we go. Here we go. They're putting it up, and that was the Nick. Another building I want to talk about is the Ascent. I believe I might have talked about this in class, where here the idea is a little bit different, where it's concrete on the bottom, but it's a skyscraper of wood that actually is assembled more like a Lego. That's what Legos, if you're familiar with them. That's what makes it really interesting. The concrete is a poured concrete at the bottom there. That's actually the parking garage, as well as like the pool area. And then above that is where the units are, and that is all true wood. There we got an example here. This is actually, you can see the wood beam structure there. I think it's kind of funny. There's a fireplace in this wood structure. But this is actually what they did was they actually limited how far they could put units up. So that last floor is actually nothing more than a community room that extends completely around the building. Here's an example where you can looking west out of it. And again, this is where they actually had to test fire code it in the wood products lab here on campus, where the idea was the wood structure had to burn for over 3 hours and still maintain its structural integrity. So that's where you can actually see how they burned the wood at I think like 2,000 degrees, and it was still able to maintain the structural integrity. What actually is kind of funny is as the wood burned, that burned charred area actually insulates the existing wood. So what they also did is actually they just overbuilt the actual structures to prevent it in situations. So if you're in that structure, it can burn for 3 hours. All right, there's a link there. I'll put that link separate. Here's some other multifamily apartments down on South Park. This is a Sophia that we had a chance to go to. A lot of these multifamily buildings, there'll be on the lower levels, there will be typically a parking garage. Then prefab concrete is built over the parking garage, literally arrives on semi-trucks and then put into place like slabs. And then the wood structure of the building is built on top. That current code limits it to, I believe, 5 stories for a wood frame structure in Madison. That's why a lot of these apartment buildings you see coming up are just limited to 5 or 6 stories. Above that, you have to go to poured concrete or some sort of steel and concrete structure. Here's an example of us. Actually, this is my real estate class back then, outside the Sophia and inside the Sophia. And this is where you could see, just like my brother's home, you still have a wood frame structure, but this is a little more involved. A lot of it comes prefabbed, pre-constructed, like the frames you see in the ceiling there, literally on truck, constantly arriving and just put into place. Here's another example across the street. This is Yemerson, similar situation. Here, I believe this is actually a concrete slab. I don't think there is an actual parking garage underneath it. I can't remember. But here they are actually building retail. So you can see where the ceilings here are 9 to 10 feet, but still made of stick frame. But they've actually just put it much closer to have a much stronger support system above it. And here's us in a unit where we've actually added insulation. And what they actually do in apartment buildings is one thing you want to be concerned with when you're looking at multifamily is what is the construction between the two units. In the Emerson here, there's actually a wall, two walls. So it's not just your next one wall dividing a unit. There is one stick frame wall, which is insulated, and then a space, and then another stick frame wall, which is insulated. That really prevents people hearing noise from one unit to the other. So if you are ever valuing a stick frame multifamily, you want to ask what it divides the apartments. Is it a single wall or is it a double wall that protects the from sound from going from one unit to the other? Will have a huge effect on valuation, actually. And here's going down South Park and more. This is the Peloton. And here it's a stick frame building, but if you look at today, it looks like brick. So there's an example here you can see of where they have the brick facade that'll be hung on the side of the building. Literally just comes as patches, and then they hang it up on the side of the building. That's why you see a brick building, it might not actually be brick. And then one other building going from South Park. This is down by Hilldale on University, right by Madison Yards. This building was built in the 2000s and actually is a great example of sustainable. Itself is a stick frame building, like normal, with a parking garage down below. It's actually did use affordable housing credits and is affordable housing today. But another view of it, this is from University. But here's where we went actually on the roof. So this is where it's built highly sustainable. It has both electric solar, which is the panels behind the guys in the red shirt. If you look over there, you'll see these lower solar panels. Those are pure electric, feed directly into the electrical system of the building. The bigger solar panels behind Tom Landgraf, who's in the black Wisconsin shirt there, those are actually thermal, where liquid flows through them and then cycles throughout the rest of the building to actually heat the building. It goes from there downstairs to where it's actually put into a water heater. Heat might be added if necessary. For example, at night, the panels don't necessarily produce energy, or which actually frequently happens, the thermal liquid has to be cooled down because it's too warm coming from the solar collectors. Here's another view of it. This is where the solar collectors, even on a snowy day, still produce energy. It's kind of amazing. So that's why it actually does work in the wintertime. All right, so down from that overlook, we've gone down into the basement. Nothing much to see. You could see the supply from the panel, the liquid supply coming around and going down there. And this is where those water heater exchangers take place, where it's heated up if it's night and there's not much energy coming from it, or it's mixed with water in order to cool it down. So all takes place in this one little room in the basement. All right, and then the last story I have here is this is 141 Wilson. This is the case where even if a city believes a building could be occupied, it might actually need to be condemned. This building no longer exists. It was torn down about 2 years ago. Had a very famous restaurant called Paisans. And what's funny about this building was the developer, T. Wall Associates, bought it, wanted to actually replace it. So they've always had the intention of just tearing it down. But they spent so much trying to just evict the current residents. A lot of law firms used it, and then Paisans sued over and over again. The funny thing is this building was actually falling apart. And I'll explain why here in a second. So another view of the building. It was office on top, restaurant on the entrance level, and about 4 levels of parking. The funniest part is there was a speakeasy club down at the bottom, back from like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. If you ever think of like a Playboy club, if you heard about them, oh yeah, that was at the bottom. It was kind of funny. I forgot what the name of it. I have to look it up. There's not many articles about it. But here's us. We had to wear hard hats to go through the building. They're going floor by floor in the deconstruction. So how they demolish these buildings. first they go through and just clear everything that can be removed in the floors. That's why they punch these out, literally so they can throw it out the buildings to where they just get it to its base frame. And then they put essentially not bulldozers, but jackhammers on the top of the building. They just circle down, deconstructing from the top of the building down. So that's what they did. Here's, like I said, this is image process. So that's where, here's an example where Pisons kept suing. And the reason is, this is what's amazing, is when you go down to the parking garage, you really see the problems. More. So back in a few weeks ago, I talked about this, where back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s even, how they would construct steel reinforced concrete structures is they would just put the steel rebar on the bottom of the form. Could be, the ground, or could be like a wood frame, and then pour the concrete over. They thought it would work, but surprise, surprise, the concrete would then chip away, exposing those steel rebar to the air, causing it to rust. So this is literally in the garage. You can see some cars there parked where the ceiling is falling down. And this eventually compromises it, because then water starts getting in and it gets really awful. Here is where a little bit farther down in the garage, where water is seeping through the concrete, rusting out the rebar. And eventually what had happened on the lower levels, they literally had to put a support system. They had to go buy thousands of jacks because they were worried about the building actually falling in on itself. So this is about the third and fourth level of the parking garage. It was that bad. So what they did is it was kind of funny. The developer had to sue the city to condemn the building because they just knew it was in such bad shape, and the brick was actually falling off on the side of the building. So this is what the concept was about 2 years ago, what the building replacing it's going to be. I think the building's now called 139 Wilson. They did not even want to keep the name 141 because there was so much bad publicity connected to how bad the building is. So this is going to be a mixed use on the bottom floors there, with the parking garage again replaced, and then condos on the upper level, deluxe condos. And that building is going up as we're talking. All right, everybody. So that is your tour of construction buildings around it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in class.